July 12, 1998, the Stade de France, Saint-Denis, Paris. 80,000 people inside the stadium. 1 billion people watching at home. And on the pitch, the greatest team in the world. Brazil. 5-time world champions, the reigning kings of football. Ronaldo, Rivaldo, Roberto Carlos, Bebeto. A team so talented, so feared, that almost nobody gave France a chance. Almost nobody. But one man had other ideas. A quiet man. A son of Algerian immigrants. A boy who had grown up kicking a ball against the walls of a housing estate in Marseille, dreaming of exactly this moment. His name was Zinedine Zidane. And tonight, in front of his entire country, he was about to write the most beautiful chapter of his life. To understand what happened on that July night in Paris, you have to understand what the 1998 World Cup meant to France. France had never won the World Cup. Not once in the 68 years since the tournament began. They had come close. A brilliant third-place finish in 1958. A stunning semi-final run in 1982 and 1986. Both heartbreaking exits on penalties. Football kept pulling France toward the prize and then snatching it away at the last moment. And then, in 1998, France hosted the tournament for the first time. Hosting the World Cup is unlike anything else in sport. The pressure is different. The expectation is different. Every match is played in front of your own people, in your own stadiums, under your own sky. The French team that summer was extraordinary. Not flashy, not spectacular in the way Brazil were, but deep and intelligent and brilliantly organised. Their goalkeeper, Fabien Barthez, was one of the best in the world. Their defence, built around Laurent Blanc and Lilian Thuram, was almost impossible to break down. Their midfield was anchored by one of the greatest players the game has ever produced. Zinedine Zidane was born in Marseille in 1972. His parents, Smail and Malika, had come to France from Algeria in search of a better life. They settled in La Castellane, a housing estate on the northern edge of the city. Life was hard, space was tight, but there was always a football. Young Zinedine played in the streets and the courtyards and the concrete spaces of La Castellane for hours every day. He was not fast, he was not tall, but he could do things with a football that nobody else could explain. A turn here, a shimmy there, a touch so soft it seemed to defy physics. By 1998, he was the best player in the world. Playing for Juventus in Italy, he had won everything there was to win at club level. He was calm, he was elegant, he was, on a football pitch, something close to art. But he had never won the World Cup. Tonight, that was going to change. On the other side of the pitch stood Brazil, the defending world champions, winners of a record 5 World Cups. A team built around the most feared striker on the planet, Ronaldo, nicknamed the Phenomenon, who had scored 4 goals in the tournament and seemed unstoppable. On paper, this was no contest. Brazil were expected to win comfortably. Most football fans around the world agreed. Even many French fans, deep in their hearts, feared the worst. But something strange happened on the day of the final. A few hours before kickoff, news began to circulate from the Brazilian camp. Ronaldo, their superstar, their talisman, the man the whole world had come to see, had suffered a seizure. A mysterious convulsion in the team hotel. He had been taken to hospital. For a time, it was unclear if he would play at all. Then, just before the match, his name appeared on the team sheet. Ronaldo would play. But something was different. Something was wrong. The teams walked out into the Stade de France to a wall of noise. France in their deep royal blue, Brazil in their iconic yellow and green. The two greatest footballing cultures in the world, side by side on the same pitch. under the floodlights of Paris. The first half began. Brazil looked hesitant. Ronaldo, normally electric, seemed distant. His eyes were glazed. His movement was slow. He was there, but he was not quite there. France, sensing something, pressed forward. 27th minute. Emmanuel Petit won the ball in midfield and played it wide to the right. Yuri Djorkaeff found space and floated across into the penalty area. And rising above every Brazilian defender, higher than seemed possible, perfectly timed, absolutely certain, came Zinedine Zidane. His header was precise, powerful, unstoppable. The ball crashed into the net. France 1, Brazil 0. The Stade de France erupted. 80,000 people became one sound, one feeling, one word. Zidane, Zidane, Zidane. Zidane ran to the corner flag. He did not scream, he did not leap. He simply raised one arm, closed his eyes for a moment, and let the noise wash over him. Half-time was approaching. France led. The unthinkable was becoming possible. And then, 45th minute, the last seconds before the break. The cross came in again, from the left side this time. Again into the penalty area. Again, rising above the Brazilian defence. The same man, the same calm, the same perfect timing. Zinedine Zidane headed the ball into the net for the second time. 2 goals, both headers, both in the same half, against Brazil in the World Cup final in Paris. The referee blew his whistle for half-time. France went to the dressing room, leading 2-0. The players sat in silence for a moment. Then the smiles began. Outside the stadium, all of France had stopped. The streets of Paris were empty. Restaurants had turned their chairs to face the television. Families were gathered around screens in houses and apartments, from Brittany to Provence. Cafes that were normally noisy with conversation fell completely silent when the ball was in play. France was leading Brazil 2-0 at half-time of the World Cup final. For a country that had waited 68 years for this moment, that had come so close so many times, it felt almost too much to believe. The second half began. Brazil pushed. Ronaldo tried, but France held firm. Barthez in goal was commanding. The French defence refused to crack. And then, in the 93rd minute, Emmanuel Petit collected a loose ball 30 metres from goal, drove forward and slid it into the bottom corner of the Brazilian net. 3-0. France 3, Brazil 0. It was over. The referee blew the final whistle. France 3, Brazil 0. France were world champions for the first time in their history. Zinedine Zidane fell to his knees on the grass of the Stade de France. He pressed his hands to his face. Around him, his teammates ran and screamed and embraced. Fabien Barthez pulled his shirt over his head. Didier Deschamps lifted the trophy with both hands. And outside, in the streets of Paris, Lyon, Marseille, Bordeaux, in every village and every city in France, something extraordinary began. People poured out of their homes, into the streets, into the squares, into the night. 1 million people converged on the Champs-Élysées. They danced and sang and wept and held each other. Car horns sounded until morning. The celebrations lasted 3 days. France had never experienced anything like it. The Champs-Élysées has seen many great celebrations in its history. Victory parades after wars, state visits, royal processions. But what happened on the night of July 12th, 1998 was different. 1 million people. Spontaneous, unstoppable, pure. They came from every neighbourhood in Paris, every background, every age, every origin. The French team itself, Zidane, the son of Algerian immigrants, Thuram from Guadeloupe, Desailly from Ghana, Vieira, born in Senegal, Henry from the Paris suburbs reflected a France that was diverse and complicated and sometimes divided. But on that night, on the Champs-Élysées, none of that mattered. Only the blue shirts, only the trophy, only the song. Allez les Bleus! At some point during the celebrations, someone projected an image onto the Arc de Triomphe. It was Zidane's face, enormous, lit up in blue and gold against the Paris night. Underneath it, 2 words: Merci Zidane. Thank you, Zidane. A man who had grown up kicking a ball against a concrete wall in La Castellane. A man whose parents had arrived in France with nothing, hoping for a better life. A man who had spent his whole career being the best player in the world without ever having won the biggest prize. Tonight, his face lit up the most famous monument in France. Football does this sometimes. It takes an ordinary life, a boy, a wall, a ball, and turns it into something that an entire country carries with it forever. In the midst of France's celebration, there was one man for whom that night meant something very different. Ronaldo played the full 90 minutes. He touched the ball, he ran, he tried. But the Ronaldo who had terrified defences all tournament was not there. The seizure had taken something from him, at least for that night. He left the pitch a beaten man. He collected a runners-up medal and walked into the tunnel. But this story has a second act. 4 years later, in Japan and South Korea, a fully recovered Ronaldo would return to the World Cup final stage and score twice to win the title for Brazil. He would weep on the pitch in Yokohama the way Zidane had wept in Paris. Football gives and takes in equal measure, sometimes in the same lifetime. France 3, Brazil 0. The 1998 World Cup final. It is remembered for many things. For the quality of the football, for the scale of the celebrations, for Ronaldo's mysterious collapse and recovery. But above all, it is remembered for Zidane. 2-headed goals in a World Cup final against Brazil before half-time. A man who grew up with nothing in a concrete estate in Marseille, whose parents crossed the Mediterranean dreaming of a better life. That man put his head on 2 crosses and changed the history of French football forever. His face was projected onto the Arc de Triomphe. 1 million people danced in the street below. And somewhere, very likely, Smail and Malika Zidane watched their son's face light up Paris and allowed themselves to believe that the journey had been worth it. Every single step of it. The 1998 World Cup trophy sits in the FIFA Museum in Zurich today. France have won it once, that night, that summer, those 2 headers. In Paris, if you ask someone who was alive on July 12, 1998, where they were when Zidane scored, they will tell you. Every single one of them will tell you exactly where they were, exactly what they felt. That is what football does at its very best. It becomes a memory you share with millions of strangers. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel. We publish a new piece of football history every single day. Next time, we go to Mexico in 1986. A man picks up a ball with his hand. He calls it the hand of God. And 4 minutes later, he scores the greatest goal ever seen. Until then, football never stops giving.